Well, tonight's guest is best friend of the show with a highly anticipated new book about Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. Father James Martin is a Jesuit priest and editor-at-large of America Magazine. He is also consultor to the Vatican's Dicastery for Communication and the author of numerous books, including the New York Times bestsellers Jesus, A Pilgrimage, The Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything, and My Life with the Saints. Father Jim is a frequent commentator in the national and international media, having appeared on all the major networks and in such diverse outlets as The Colbert Report and NPR's Fresh Air, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. But his latest book, I have right here in my hand, is called Come Forth, the Promise of Jesus' Greatest Miracle. Welcome back to the show in studio, Father James Martin.
Thank you. I'm always so happy to be called the best friend of the show. It really means a lot to me.
You like that?
I do. It's nice to be back with all you guys.
Now, how do you like I'm sorry that we're no longer at Rockefeller Center. How do you like our new digs in the basement?
It's overwhelmingly beautiful. No, it's actually kind of cool. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you're right here, right?
Right.
Downstairs from where you live.
This is when they built this rectory in 1931, and I know you live on the adjacent block.
Right.
The Paulus had one of the first radio stations in the country, an AM radio station, WLWL, and this was the announce booth.
So
This
cool.
is the original stuff on the wall.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
From when? From
1931. 1931.
Are these foamy things from 1931?
Not the foamy things, but maybe those asbestos-laden ones.
That's right,
So
for the asbestos.
Welcome.
Which we can all rip out and then get lung
And
cancer.
so now, instead of us all being in the studio, we've got Brett in New Orleans. Krista, I don't know if you've met. Krista's in Cleveland.
I don't know if we met Krista. Nice to see you, Krista.
Nice to meet you, Father.
And Brett, I know from way back. Brett, now I have to ask you. So, are you in school? Bring me up to speed.
Thank you for asking, because the last time you were on, or at least close, you had actually. He makes me laugh every time he does this, and I always forget that he's gonna play,
so
which is
funny.
why it gets me every time.
That's so funny.
In fact, I was laughing at my own graduation. Yes, I did graduate.
You did graduate.
did.
Okay.
The last
just
couple,
did.
at least maybe 2 times you're on ago, but the last time we really had a big chat about this, you had written a letter of recommendation for me.
I remember that.
Because you're kind of a hot shot, and I knew you'd write nicely about me, so that was nice.
And he got in.
And I got in.
That's
and
right.
a few years
Nonetheless.
later, so it did fly by. I just graduated essentially last week. I was August 11th,
Congratulations.
almost 2 weeks ago now.
That's great.
And, yeah, I'm still in New Orleans. I'm never leaving, and life is good. So that's a quick update for you.
And,
Thank you.
and
so much.
what's your congratulations? What's your degree?
So that's a master's in social work.
Wow.
With the eventual, then I have to get about 3 years of clinical training and supervised hours on my way to being essentially a therapist. Mental health therapist is the goal.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
His organization told him that as of now, he has to start putting the letters after his name, the MSW. So you appreciate this. You got lots of degrees. And you got the Jesuit.
Mazel tov. Yeah, that's right. I got the SJ. Well, you have a CSP too.
Do you have to, with your various publishers, do you have to fight for the SJ? Because a lot of book publishers don't like to make you think like you're
No,
a
because
priest.
I mean I've asked that like from the very beginning. I said
Okay.
that's who I am,
Right.
and why not? And
Now,
they're fine with it.
What about when we go on, because you and I have done some TV appearances in secular media. Sometimes they really dig in heels and they don't want to put letters. And I'm like, it's not like it's a degree.
No,
it's my
they-
last
on
name.
TV they won't because
Yeah,
they don't get it. I mean that's okay. I mean most Catholics don't get it. SJ. Someone told me SJ stands for either soft job or stupid jerk.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
I know.
what about, have you heard the ones with the Paulus?
So what is that?
Can't Stop Preaching, the CSP.
Funny. By the way, I would pick short mass, no music.
Short Mass, no music?
Oh, you kidding?
Even at St. Paul the Apostle, where you love the
I
music.
love St. Paul the Apostle. I'm a parishioner. I go there. But, when it goes past 11 o'clock, I'm like, come on, guys. We all got lives.
Being nice,
Says the
'cause
priest.
He's not
Says the priest.
referencing when you're preaching, Father.
No,
Dave. He
he's
said,
a very
"Come on,
good
guys." Yeah.
Dave is a very good preacher.
Still can't
I'm
stop.
always happy when he preaches, yeah. And he does it without notes, which is quite impressive.
No notes. Just like this show, except the intro for you. I don't want to get that wrong.
God forbid.
You got all your best
That's
sellers.
right.
There's a lot of
That's
books
dope.
on there. Yeah.
That's right.
This is what number book?
I should probably figure this out because
Yeah.
people keep asking. It's probably I really don't know. It's like 14, 15. Because otherwise I have to stand in front of my bookcase and count the
that
books.
would take a long time.
Yeah.
That's right.
For somebody who's written
right.
something over a baker's dozen
That's
of
right.
books, you'd think
But then it's
counting
like,
to 14
do I
should be easy.
count books that I edited? Do I count books that are just online? So I don't know. It's about 14, 15, something like that.
It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think I've been on for
in the
I think
ballpark.
I've been on for most of them.
I think you have.
Yeah.
And you've, long ago we've talked about this, but it still amazes me that the way one does that is that you have this discipline of every day you write.
Yeah, but I kind of enjoy it. So two things. One, I enjoy it, and it's not like it's under a deadline. And two, because I work at American Media, as you know, and the royalties for the book, because I'm a Jesuit, go to American Media.
Right.
You know, it's like work time. So
work time.
So I don't, it's not like I'm taking out time from work.
But I don't even mean that. I just mean the discipline.
Oh, I
I know
love
you
it.
enjoy it, but the discipline of like every day. You got to keep the muscle. It's like working out.
Yeah, not every single day, but I like it, and I enjoy the research. And writing about Lazarus was fascinating. I loved it. I love this story. I mean, I better love this story because I spent 5 years with it.
5 years.
Yeah. It took about.
It is. This is a pretty thick book.
That's right.
I was comparing. Actually, just grab mine. Mine's right on the shelf right there. See,
The math class?
Math
Yeah.
class. I just wanted to compare the thickness.
The thickness of the book.
And this is okay. There
These
it
are
is.
both
right,
hardcover.
so- right,
that's-
so-
we're just looking at the pages here.
So my book is 3 times as good because it's 3 times as long. It's like the old joke. What's your book about? It's about 350
About
pages.
350 pages. We're talking about Come Forth, the Promise of Jesus' Greatest Miracle, the brand new book from Father James Martin. So why 5 years with Lazarus? Why do you love the story? Before we get into the book, why the love?
I've always loved the story of Lazarus. I find it is called Jesus' Greatest Miracle. It's in the Gospel of John. And I think I was first sort of fascinated by it when I watched, this is for some people of a certain age, the 1977 miniseries Jesus of Nazareth. Franco Zeffirelli was on TV. And the raising of Lazarus was just incredible.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I just, Lazarus, come forth. And it just blew me away. And the story's just so fascinating. And I would bring people on pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And one of the things we would do is we would go into the tomb. You can still visit it, Lazarus's tomb. And I would say, leave something behind that you want to kind of leave behind or let die and come out of the tomb and hear Jesus call you to come forth. And it was really powerful for people would cry as they would, and I think physically going down in the tomb, coming up and out of the tomb. So I thought, if it's an important book for me and it seems to really resonate with a lot of people, why not write about it? And so I spent 5 years on it, really, and most of it during the pandemic. I had a lot of time.
Oh, that's
obviously.
true.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and that's why we're here in the basement now because of the
That's right.
pandemic.
Yeah, exactly.
Father James Martin, our guest here on the Busted Halo Show, coming to you from the very same studio that I am. It's rare that I have a guest.
That's great.
I had to
I'm
adjust
right
the
next
AC
door.
because there's this very small room. So.
Well,
That's
and
right.
also, we don't really have the green room there that we would have had at Sirius XM satellite radio. I hope it was okay. I hope it was.
Did I
to
dust
your
off the
standards.
chair?
It
enough?
was very nice, but that was a kind of cool studio. That was kind of a
At
fun
Sirius
studio.
XM? Oh, yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of glass.
Oh, no, they're all still there. Just
yeah.
no one's in those.
Oh yeah. Well, and also lots of the sort of like faded rock and roll stars that I would pass on the way in, all with their their kind of balding gray,
But long gray
stringy hair.
ponytail, yeah.
Yeah, they look a little
Yeah,
different in person than when you
They
see them
do.
on VH1
They look.
or
Yeah,
something.
they look.
Yeah.
You can tell like they've had a hard life.
I don't
So
know what
now
they're
you're saying
about the priests.
even before you were coming on, when we talked about
Mm.
it last night on the show, Father
Mm-hmm.
James Martin's coming on, and we talked about the book, Jesus' Greatest Miracle. Instantly, there was controversy already on the show.
Yeah.
Brett Siddell, you
Mm.
would have a bone to pick with this claim that this is the greatest.
Look, I didn't write a 500-page thesis on my claim,
That's
so
right.
I'm probably
And-
going to lose
and-
this pretty
and
quickly.
don't you forget it.
I will take back my letter of recommendation. When I heard
dear,
the title,
dear
Jesus
sirs and madams. Yeah.
I retract my previous sentence.
That's right.
I saw Jesus' Greatest Miracle, and I was like, oh, it's about time somebody wrote about when Jesus turned all that water into wine. That was the best thing he's ever done. And then Lazarus, give me a break. It's just one guy. I mean,
Yeah.
One guy.
Well, it is funny. In the book, I say, it is traditionally called Jesus' Greatest Miracle. And I find that kind of funny because I say in the book, it's as if there's some sort of contest between the miracles. But I really do think raising someone from the dead who's been,
That's a big one.
shut away in his tomb for 4 days, that's a pretty big one.
that is big. I'm sure the blind beggar was like, where am I on the list? Is there a top 10 that I should be checking out now that I
Yeah,
can
I
see?
think I would say Stilling the Storm. Well, here's a little trivia question. He raises 2 other people from the dead in the Gospel. So do we know offhand who they are? Let's see if we know. No, it's so the two people.
Swear.
Give me 10 seconds.
Isn't there a Mary that gets There's a lot of Marys, so I'm not saying the Mary.
All right, who else?
Answer in the form of a question, please. Who is the widow of Nain's son?
Mm-hmm.
And who is the daughter of Jairus? There we go. So it's interesting. We tend to think of just.
Brett's like, who's the?
We
who is
tend
the-
to
Because
think
now
of
it's not greatest miracle, so he did it to more than one guy. Wait a second.
Well,
here.
but one, it's interesting. We tend to think of just Lazarus when we hear about raising people from the dead. And so there's two stories in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The daughter of Jairus, who's a synagogue official, is thought to be asleep, and she's dead. And Jesus comes and, basically raises her from the dead. But she's only been dead a little while. The widow of Nain is this woman in, not surprisingly, Nain, a small town, and her son is on a funeral procession, so he's not buried yet. So Lazarus is dead, and Jesus even says there's a great line where they say we're going to go wake Lazarus because we think he's asleep, and Jesus says Lazarus is dead.
He says that in the story.
He does, and one of the reasons is because Jewish belief at the time was that the soul could hover around the body for 2 or 3 days, and so the 4 days. Isn't that interesting? So the 4 days is like he's dead, and so there would be no mistaking what he's doing. And it's a great. There was like a lot of interesting things about the book, but about the story. But Lazarus's death leads to Jesus coming and raising him to life. And that leads in John's gospel to Jesus's death, because that's the precipitating factor in Jesus's death in John's gospel, which leads to life. So there's this death, life, sort of beautiful
Paschal
pattern.
mystery,
There you
even,
go.
if you will.
Double Paschal mystery.
Father James Martin is our guest here on the Busted Halo Show, talking about his brand new book, Come Forth, The Promise of Jesus' Greatest Miracle. You started talking about, we're promoting it.
That's right. You can promote the sequel. You can promote the sequel, come fifth, and then come sixth.
Come fifth.
I feel bad in telling him this, that like right now, only the other 3 heads you see on this Zoom can see.
He's holding up
hold up the book but it's nice.
No,
it looks good.
Brett, he's practicing for when he's on like the Today Show or whatever else.
Yeah, from your lips to God's ears.
Now, you were talking about how it being powerful to be near the site of Lazarus' house and Lazarus' tomb. I've been to Holy Land a few times, but because of rearranging the itinerary, this last time I was there in March was the first time we went to the house of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And I don't know, there was something about it. It became one of my new favorite places to go in the Holy Land. I think largely because a lot of the other scenes in the gospel and a lot of other places you would go, Jesus is like his star celebrity Jesus. This is where he did this. This is where we go up on that little hill where he fed the 5,000. He's breaking, and everyone's looking at him like, this is where he hung out with his friends, and he could kick off his sandals and be just him.
Yeah, and when he's at Mary and Martha's house, I talk about this in the book, he also gets a little scolded from Martha because Martha's doing all the work, diakonia, by the way, and she says to Jesus, don't you care that my sister isn't helping? She's just sitting at your feet listening. So it's a great scene where she says to him, one of the greatest quotes, tell her to help me. Who talks to Jesus like that? Hey, tell her to help me. And so you see Martha and Mary, good friends with Jesus and being honest with Jesus. Right. I talk about this in terms of how we need to be honest with God in prayer. But no, you're right. He hangs out with them. He loves going to Bethany. It's very unclear how he would have known them, how he knew Lazarus. Lazarus has no words to speak in the gospel. Why all 3 of them are unmarried, why it's not called Lazarus's house, all these kind of interesting questions, all of which are answered in the book.
Oh, they're answered in the book.
Right.
They're not just raised up.
Definitively. That's right.
raised up, well put.
Oh, there you go. Oh, boy. That flew right over my head.
Nothing flies over Brett's head. He's a master.
We've been doing this a while, yeah.
Zing.
He's got a master's degree.
Ooh, he is a master.
Well, I didn't want to waste the letter of recommendations you guys
That's
wrote.
right. That's right. Yeah, you might as well. Might as well.
Through.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
It makes me laugh. Either makes me super emotional or it makes me super giggly.
Right.
I guess that's my life in a nutshell. But
So he texted me when he was actually at his graduation ceremony in
played
Baton
it?
Rouge, Louisiana, and they're playing it. And I'm like, oh, does it sound like the version I have, or is it like a live orchestra? He's like, no, it's exactly the same.
They're probably playing the same recording.
Yeah.
it's the same. Yeah, everyone's
what he
pulling
said.
the same one from the grand sound effects library of the
That's
earth.
right.
Well, what's funny is that just like you were just saying, getting reprimanded at like a holy event, everyone else is getting emotional. I'm filming for these guys like they're playing Pomp and Circumstance. Like, dude, this is not a joke.
Oh, you couldn't really participate in it. But when you got up to get your diploma, did you put the camera down and say, "Yeah, okay, thanks"? Yeah,
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Good idea. Yeah.
My folks were there, so I had to raise the bar.
Oh,
a
that's
little bit.
nice. Yeah, beautiful.
You could have, on the mortarboard, you could have had like a GoPro, so it films everything that's happening.
That's right. Busted Halo.
I've seen people do that before, and even I thought that was tacky. So if I think it's tacky, that's where you cross the line. That's where
I was at a commencement once. I was a commencement speaker at some college, and one of the kids came up, and he was so intent on waving to everybody and getting his picture and all this kind of stuff, he walked right past the college president.
Whoops.
And I was like, oh, sorry.
Whoopsie daisy.
Whoopsie daisy. I'm gonna need that.
Father James Martin, best friend of the show, joins us here in studio, talking about his new book, Come Forth, The Promise of Jesus' Greatest Miracle. One of the things you address in the book, which as a preacher, you definitely wrestle with this every time we preach on this. Why did Jesus wait?
Yeah.
Why didn't he come right? Because Martha's like, quick, come, he's sick. And Jesus like, and they're like, should we go? He's like, no, not yet.
Yeah.
And then he gets there, and it's too late. Or so we think.
Or so we think. Yeah, so for those that don't know the story, Martha and Mary are Lazarus' sisters and send word to Jesus that, he whom you love, beautiful word, is ill. And he waits. He waits 2 days. Now, there's a couple ways of looking at this. In John's gospel, Jesus, as you know, is always in control in John's gospel. So he will go when he goes.
This is on my time.
But the other thing is what we were just talking about, which is that I think one of the reasons he doesn't go is because they wanted people to know, and he wanted people to know, that Lazarus was dead. And so if he went, for example, like the daughter of Jairus, if he goes, like right then, I was like, oh, she wasn't really dead. Or the widow of Nain's son, he's still in the funeral procession. I think there's a sense that, and scripture scholars talk about him wanting people to know what he's doing, but also him being able to give something more to Lazarus than just healing, which is new life. So I think it's both of those things. He'll go when he goes, and he wants to make sure people know that the guy is dead before he does.
He's intentional about it.
He is. I mean, we can't know for sure, but this is what they think. This is what the scholars think. It is very strange. And, when he gets there, the sisters say, both of them, word for word, Lord, if you had been here, our brother would not have died, which some people think of as a kind of profession of faith, and it may be, but it's also a kind of reproach. It's a little bit of a complaint. Where were you? You heard all these other people. What about for Lazarus? So,
which seems to reinforce their relationship and how close they were, because you don't even see the apostles treating him like that.
No, the only one who does that maybe is Peter when he says, God forbid you should suffer, and then Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. But no, they're very, one of the interesting things also is that in Luke's gospel, where you have that story we were talking about with Martha and Mary, and Martha complains, their characters parallel in John's gospel. So in Luke's gospel, Martha's the active one, right? She's, cooking or whatever, or working. In John's gospel, in the story of Lazarus, Martha's also the active one. She goes out to meet Jesus while Mary stays at home. So it's neat to see that personalities sort of mirror one another in the two gospel stories.
Maybe one was an introvert.
Maybe one was an introvert. But Martha's pretty strong. Tell her to help me, and if you had been here... No, it's pretty strong. I love it. And these are. I talk about the fact that knowing their names means that they would have probably been known to the early church. So these were people whose memories were really treasured by the early church. They would have known these women, and Lazarus too.
So this is also one of the few times in the Gospels we see Jesus expressing emotion.
Correct.
Really, I mean, there's not a lot of times where they say, and Jesus was happy and he was laughing. I mean, they talk about maybe some of the righteous anger in the temple, but he weeps in this story.
Now the question is, and I know you read the book, why does he weep? And most people say, oh, he's weeping because he's so sad about Lazarus. But in the Greek, the words that are used have to do with anger. Believe it or not. And it's kind of a surprise for a lot of people that he's, and that the particular word that is used in other places where he's angry or he's frustrated. And a lot of scholars say that he could have wept for many reasons, kind of a mixture of emotions, but that he's angry and he's frustrated by their lack of faith. And so that's what most scholars would say. It's a mixture of anger and frustration, because his weeping is described with a word that is used in other places that is also where he is frustrated, which is really interesting.
But it does go along with what we were just talking about, which we could explain a little more for the listeners, that in John's gospel, Jesus is portrayed much less, we don't want to say not at all, but much less human and weak and having foibles than he is in the other Gospels.
Yeah.
In John's Gospel, he is in control.
Yeah.
When we hear the Passion narrative,
That's right.
Jesus is controlling everything. So it would stand to reason that he's not like some weak little human guy. He's like, I am Jesus, Lord. I am weeping for a ultimate purpose. That you will
That's a
determine
very
later.
good point. I mean, he's not, and the word that is used for tears is different between Martha and Mary's tears and the tears of their friends is different than the words that are described Jesus's tears. They're like sobbing. He weeps, which is a little different. So. We have to see him in control, and of course, this is John. This is all through the filter of John's way of presenting this story, which definitely happened. And there's also the other interesting question is why it's not in the other Gospels, which I talk about, which is fascinating.
It's in the book.
It's in the book. You got to buy it.
BustedHalo.com/radio for where you can buy your copy of the brand new book from our guest, Father James Martin, Come Forth, the Promise of Jesus' Greatest Miracle. All right, next Holy Land trip. When's that coming up?
Coming up in February or March.
all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited, and we'll go back. We'll go to Lazarus' tomb. That's for sure. I'll bring my book.
Favorite hummus?
From the
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's
Yeah,
every
I would
meal.
say from the Notre Dame Center.
Oh, really? You like there?
Delicious. I love hummus. It's funny. The first time I went to Israel, I said I love hummus, and someone was like, "Well, it's a good thing because you're going to get a lot of it."
Boy, I'm glad you didn't say you hated it or you're allergic.
That's
'cause
right.
This is gonna be a quick trip.
That's exactly right.
Dietary restrictions? Hummus. Ooh.
That's right. Ooh, you might want to take another country. Yeah.
I think there is a Burger King about 50 miles from here.
There probably is one like 10 feet from here. Yeah.
Now, you've been referencing a lot. You put a lot of, not just this is in your musings, you put a lot of research in this. You're talking about scholars think and scholars think.
Yes.
Well, you're a scholar.
Not really.
Come on.
Well, don't. I don't have an I don't have an MS. I don't have an MSW.
Hey,
But
listen, not everyone can have one.
No, I think it's. I'm actually being serious. No, I mean I went to graduate school like all priests do. I have an MDiv.
What do I have?
Which is a pastoral degree and a THM. But I would really say I'm not. I think to be a scripture scholar, it probably means you have a PhD. But I would say I'm certainly a student of the Bible, and I love sort of popularizing sort of hardcore scholarship and make it really accessible to people. I love doing that. I love doing
you
that.
You draw on, and I believe I saw even a blurb at the front from the guy who taught me John's Gospel, Father Maloney, who's Australian.
Really?
Oh, he was great.
Where did
at
you
Catholic
have?
University. He was there. He was like on a, I don't know, sabbatical or something.
He was one of my heroes. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So he taught you John's Gospel? I should have
that's the class.
I should have consulted you.
Well,
No, so one of the great
guy
things was
taught the class. That doesn't mean Father Dave absorbed every single lesson.
no, but I
the
had
guy
this.
put out
I had
there.
this. I had this kind of dream team of scholars who not only helped me but reviewed the manuscript, and there were fascinating insights.
And he was one of
he
them?
was one of
Oh,
them.
great.
He's one of them. So Maloney, A.J. Levine, Michael Peppard, some of the other people.
It was great taking
Brendan
classes
Burns.
too with the real solid Australian accent too.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I won't try an
No, you
Australian
won't.
accent. Yeah.
Now, maybe go down and visit him. Have you ever been down under?
No.
Okay,
I'm
all
not
right.
a big fan of plane trips, and when I hear it's like, what is it, like 19 hours or something?
Oh, this is what I've been dying to ask you. Speaking of not a big fan of
Yeah.
plane trips, there you are. You're a lot of social media. You're over in Lisbon. It's World
Right,
Youth
yeah.
Day, and then the Pope's about to arrive, and you're like, I'm out, going on retreat.
I had a retreat.
You went home. You left.
I had a
World
retreat.
Youth Day.
No, but I did my talk, and I had my retreat. And I think the Pope would be very happy that I didn't. Would you want to skip my retreat, my annual retreat?
Well, Father Dave, you're forgetting these guys are both Jesuits. They're more like buddies. You know what I mean? It's like, he's got a bigger speech than
No,
me
I would.
today,
Well,
that's
actually, it
all.
was funny. I actually added a day because I was invited to speak at one of the World Youth Day things, and I thought, well, I will actually, and I'll miss a day of my retreat.
Now you're talking about your personal retreat.
My personal retreat,
Quiet
my
time.
annual retreat,
right.
yeah, and that's kind of sacrosanct for me. And also, I felt like I'd kind of done my thing, and I wouldn't. I mean, I would have loved to have gone to the mass and all that kind of stuff, but I had to go.
You had to
I
go on
had my retreat.
Right.
This is a real Jesuit right here.
Yeah, thank you, thank
That's
you.
their fault for scheduling it that way. I'm
Yeah,
surprised they
that's
didn't
right.
check in with you, honestly.
I should have said, "Can you change World Youth Day?"
Now, Father James Martin, coming up very soon in the church, maybe some people have heard of this and they don't really know what's
Yeah.
going on or they don't care. There's a big synod happening, a big
Synod.
gathering in Rome. Are
Yeah.
you somehow, do you have a stake in this?
Well, I'm going.
Yes, cool.
So I'm a member, which is
member
exciting.
of the synod.
The synod.
What is a synod?
The synod is a kind of worldwide gathering of bishops and priests and lay people. And this particular synod is to talk about how the church is governed. So it is called, which is probably the worst title ever,
It is, yeah.
the Synod on Synodality. So it's like a friend of mine, a Jewish friend of mine was like, is that like a meeting about meetings?
A meeting
And I
about
said,
meetings. That's what it sounds
Pretty
like.
much. But it's exciting. And
But isn't it the Pope Francis sees the synod process
Yes.
as not just let's get together and have a meeting. He really sees it as collaborative.
That's right.
Let's listen to one another. Let's
and
walk with one
right,
another.
and it's been super collaborative because it started with like listening sessions in parishes, a lot of parishes and dioceses, and then they sort of moved up their kind of response to the bishops' conferences, and they kind of fed into everything in the Vatican. They came out with this working document, so it's really collaborative, and it's trying to like listen to the Spirit, the Holy Spirit in the people of God. And so there's 300 people going. I'm one of them, which is it's exciting. I'm really excited.
So we say you go, you're like there the whole time. You're in the meeting.
Yes,
Okay,
yes. So
yeah,
I'm
You're
one
wearing
of,
these headphones because they're translating probably.
They probably are. And then so the Pope appointed 70 people. I'm one of the people he appointed to go, which is exciting.
Yeah,
There's about 13 people from the U.S., half bishops. Mostly bishops, and then me, and then 2 or 3 lay people. So it's really exciting. It was funny. I had a meeting with the woman the other day from the U.S. Bishops' Conference, who's wonderful, and she was like, "Yeah, Team America." And I said, "Could you imagine if we came?" I said, "My thought of you come in with like a suit with like a big American flag on it, and our hats, and
America!
exactly."
Yeah.
But it's
you
exciting.
actually have to go home. And you're like, good, because I got a retreat that I have to do. So I'm
Well,
busy.
it starts with a retreat. So starts with a 3-day retreat.
That one could have counted.
I know, I will. But it's exciting, and also, a month in Rome, and I'll be staying at the Jesuit headquarters. I'm really looking forward to it. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
So I'm just knocking wood that everything goes well, and
And saying a rosary.
and of course I'm my rosary. By the way, when I was in Lisbon, I visited Fatima, which was really
Where
fascinating.
She said, "Pray the rosary."
She said, pray the rosary, right?
So, but as I recall from what you posted, you didn't know necessarily you'd be able to get there because it's not like 5 minutes away. So you would like,
Right. No, exactly. So I don't know. I'd never been to Portugal. Therefore, I'd never been to Lisbon. And a friend of mine who was running the Jesuit portion of World Youth Day, which was called Magis, which was really great. This guy, Sam Barral. He said, "Would you like to go to Fatima?" And I thought, well, I could be like 7 hours away. Or he's like, nothing is 7 hours away in Portugal. It's a kind of a small country. So it was an hour away, and this gay couple actually, these 2 men, one of whom worked at the Fatima Shrine, the other whom works for Catholic Synodality, Catholic Life Community, Christian Life Community. They drove me. And it was incredible. I really loved it. And, it was like door-to-door service. They picked me up at the Jesuit community.
Wow.
They drove me to Fatima. They
this
gave
is
me
your
lunch.
personal trip to
It
Fatima.
was really wonderful. And then I'll tell you a funny story. So the guy who works at the shrine, he's a sign language interpreter. I said, "Is this crowded or not?" And he said, "Oh, no, this is not crowded at all." Because it felt kind of, you can get around and everything.
You mean there was a lot of people
There were a lot
and
of
you
people.
wanted to know, is this a crowd or is this...
Correct. Yes, it's like super crowded. And he goes, "Oh no, this is for this time of year. It's not crowded at all." And I said, "Where's everyone?" I was worried because I thought, "Oh, everyone from World Youth Day." Oh, he goes, "No, they're waiting for the Pope's visit." When there's like 500,000 people. So I was like, "I'm glad we're coming today."
I prefer it.
They were like, "You'll be here for that," and you're like, "Oh no, I have my personal retreat. I'll be long."
That's right.
And they're like,
I think the
"What's going
Pope.
on?"
I think if I asked the Pope, "Would you wanted me to miss my retreat?" He would be like, "No, don't miss your retreat. Not for
Whatever
me."
helps you sleep at night, Father John.
Hey, I missed a day. I would have felt terrible. Well, I don't know. As a Jesuit, I would have felt terrible. Like, oh, I was in Portugal. I skipped my retreat.
For the Pope.
Well, no, but I could watch that on TV.
All right. Father James Martin, we've got a link on our radio blog that is bustedhalo.com/radio. So all of our listeners can follow that link, find out where they can pick up Come Forth, the promise of Jesus' greatest miracle. Even if you don't click on the link, I think safe to say wherever fine books are sold.
That's right, in print, audio, and ebook.
So you did the audio, you did the...
I did.
Like this with the mic?
Yes, oh my gosh.
I know you hate it.
I hate it. It took
Thanks two of you guys.
five days for 6 hours a day. I almost thought I was going to... And, you know, it's one of these things where like, boy, the next book I do is going to be shorter, that's for sure. It's driving me crazy. No, but I know people...
I know
like,
it's a lot thicker than Father Dave's book, but this is not worth it.
But also people like to hear the author. I know that. They like to hear the author.
For sure.
Yeah.
Hey, but they can have AI do your voice next time.
The other thing is there's so many unusual words in the book and like Greek, you know.
Right.
So how could you get some actor to know all this stuff, you know?
That's why Cardinal Dolan taps me.
you could-
I'd rather read
yeah.
my own book, I guess. All right, Father Jim, thank you so much for coming in person.
Always a pleasure.
Pretty cool. All right.